The Omega selection was where you went when no one wanted you. And as Seren stood among the desperate women who had been rejected, abandoned, or simply forgotten, unlike the others, she didn't try to be noticed. Heavy gloves concealed her hands completely. Long sleeves covered her arms to the wrist. Fabric hid every inch of skin below her neck, shadowing the truth she could never reveal. So the crowd whispered, "What could be so terrible that even here, among the unwanted, she had to hide?" They weren't wrong to wonder. Beneath the fabric lay her shame, her curse, the silver glow that crept beneath her skin like moonlight trapped in her veins, the corruption her father said had killed her mother, the power she'd been taught to fear since childhood. Seren braced herself for rejection. She would not be chosen if she kept herself covered. She would not survive if she exposed what lay beneath. Then the Alpha King arrived. Theron of Valdris. Powerful, legendary, and dying alongside his cursed pack. He walked past high-born Omegas and noble daughters without a glance. Women who had prepared for months. Women who had begged for this chance. He ignored them all, and stopped directly in front of Seren. "This one," he said. The hall erupted in shock. Why would a king whose pack was dying, who needed a powerful Omega to anchor his bloodline, choose the one woman hiding herself completely? Seren didn't understand either. Not until he made his terms clear. He would marry her, protect her, give her everything she needed. He would even swear never to look beneath her coverings, never to demand she reveal her skin. But only under one condition. He would never love her. He didn't have time for love. He was dying, and so was everyone he'd sworn to protect. He needed an Omega anchor, nothing more. Neither of them understood how impossible that vow would be, or that by dawn, everything they believed about themselves would be proven wrong. The Great Hall of Valdris had been transformed for the selection. Silk banners hung from ancient rafters. Candles flickered in iron sconces along walls of gray stone. And on a raised platform near the throne, 15 Omega women stood in a line like offerings waiting to be claimed. This was where unmated Omegas came when all other options had failed, when their families couldn't secure a proper match, when age or circumstance or some whispered scandal made them unmarriageable by traditional means. The men who attended these selections weren't seeking love. They sought political alliances, breeding potential, status. Seren understood this. She also understood that she was the least desirable woman on that platform. The Omega beside her wept silently, tears tracking through powder carefully applied to hide the lines around her eyes. She'd been beautiful once. You could still see it in the structure of her face. But 3 broken engagements and 32 winters had brought her here. Another stood with her chin raised, defiant despite the burn scar that twisted down her neck. A third kept her hands pressed against her stomach, the slight swell of pregnancy barely visible beneath her gown. And then there was Seren. She stood apart from the others, wrapped in fabric from neck to toe. Her gloves were gray silk, fitted tight to her fingers. Her sleeves extended past her wrists. Even her collar rose high, covering the base of her throat where the silver sometimes flickered beneath her skin. She felt every stare like a physical touch. "What's wrong with that one?" a nobleman muttered to his companion, not bothering to lower his voice. "Covered like she's hiding plague sores." "Probably is," the companion replied. "Why else would anyone hide so completely?" The whispers rippled through the hall. Seren kept her eyes fixed on the stone floor, counting the cracks between tiles to keep herself calm. This was it. The end of everything. If she wasn't chosen today, her father would finally be rid of her. He'd made that clear before she'd left Thornfeld. No one will want what they can't see. And when this fails, I'll have no choice but to dispose of you properly. She knew what properly meant. A quiet death. An accident. A body that would never be found. The officiator was describing the third woman's bloodline when the great doors burst open. Every voice died. Every head turned. The presence that rolled through those doors wasn't ordinary alpha dominance. This was something else entirely. Something ancient and overwhelming, the kind of power that came from bloodlines so pure they were more legend than reality. And beneath that power, something wrong, something wounded. A darkness that pulsed like a dying heartbeat. "The Alpha King," someone gasped. "Goddess above, what is he doing here?" Seren felt him before she saw him, a wave of cold that shouldn't exist in an alpha's presence. Alphas ran hot. Everyone knew that. But this one radiated winter. Theron of Valdris walked into the hall as if he owned it. Which, Seren supposed, he did. He was tall. Taller than any man in the room. Dark hair fell past his shoulders, and his features looked carved from stone rather than flesh. Sharp cheekbones. A jaw that could cut glass. Eyes the color of a frozen lake. Pale blue and absolutely merciless. But those eyes were shadowed. His skin held an ashen pallor that spoke of sleepless nights. His movements, though controlled, carried a stiffness that suggested pain held carefully in check. He's sick, Seren realized. Just like the rumors said, just like his pack. The corruption spreading through Valdris was well known. Pack members losing their ability to shift. Children born without their wolves, elders dying before their time, and at the center of it all, an Alpha King slowly fading alongside his people. He needed an Omega anchor, a mate whose bond could stabilize the pack. That's why he'd called this selection. But kings didn't attend selections personally. They sent representatives. They reviewed candidates from portraits and lineage documents. So why was he here? Theron stopped in the center of the hall. His gaze swept over the platform, assessing each woman in turn. "Continue," he said. The officiator fumbled for words. "Your Majesty, we are deeply honored by your presence. If you'd like to review the candidates privately, we can arrange." I said continue. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute command. The officiator bowed hastily and resumed his descriptions. Seren kept her head down as Theron began walking along the platform. His footsteps echoed against stone. She heard him pause at the weeping woman. A long silence. Then the footsteps moved on. Another pause at the scarred Omega. More silence. Dismissal. He continued down the line, and Seren's heart hammered louder with each step. She wasn't foolish enough to hope. She just wanted him to pass her by. To ignore her like everyone else. To give her more time to figure out how to escape her father's plans. The footsteps stopped directly in front of her. Seren's breath caught. She could feel his presence like a wall of ice inches from her body. Could smell winter pine and something deeper. Something wounded beneath the cold. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. And then, cutting through it like a blade through silk, cold and final and absolutely certain, the Alpha King said 5 words that changed everything. "I want this one." Through the carriage window, Seren watched the castle of Valdris grow larger against the darkening sky. Its towers were black stone veined with silver, rising from cliffs that overlooked a forest of ancient pines. Beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. Sharp and cold and built for purpose. She still couldn't make sense of what had happened. After the king's announcement, chaos had erupted. Nobles demanding explanations. The officiator stammering apologies. Her father's face twisting with something she couldn't read, fury perhaps, or fear, before he'd been escorted from the hall. And through it all, Theron had simply waited. When the noise finally died, he gestured to his guards. "Bring her to my study within the hour. We have terms to discuss." Then he'd walked out without looking back. Now Seren sat alone in a carriage that smelled of leather and pine, her gloved hands folded in her lap, her thoughts racing faster than the wheels beneath her. Why me? The question circled endlessly. He could have chosen anyone, the noble women with impeccable bloodlines, the young Omegas with years of fertility ahead. Even the scarred one had more to offer than a woman who refused to show her skin, unless he knows. The thought made her stomach clench. Maybe he'd sensed the corruption beneath her gloves. Maybe he intended to expose her publicly, make an example of an Omega who dared hide her true nature. Maybe... The carriage stopped. Seren's throat tightened as a guard opened the door. She took his offered hand with trembling fingers, stepping down onto smooth stone. The castle loomed above her, impossibly vast, impossibly cold. Just like its king. She followed the guard through corridors lined with tapestries depicting wolves hunting beneath silver moons. Servants bowed as she passed, their expressions curious but not cruel. No one sneered at her coverings. No one whispered about plague or corruption. It was so different from Thornfeld that she felt dizzy. They stopped before a door of dark oak reinforced with iron. The guard knocked twice, then pushed it open. "His Majesty will see you now." Seren stepped inside. The room was a study, shelves lined with books and maps, a desk covered in documents marked with official seals, a fire burning in the hearth, though it did little to chase away the cold that seemed to emanate from the room's other occupant. Theron stood by the window, his back to her, silhouetted against the last light of dusk. He didn't turn when she entered. Seren dropped into a curtsy, her sleeves brushing the floor. "Your Majesty." "Rise." She straightened. Her heart pounded so hard she was certain he could hear it. Finally he turned. And up close, in the firelight, she could see what distance had hidden. The shadows beneath his eyes were darker than she'd realized. His skin held an almost translucent quality, like ice beginning to crack. And his scent, that wounded darkness she'd noticed before, was stronger here. Pain carefully concealed beneath control. He's dying faster than anyone knows, she thought. The corruption is killing him. His pale eyes swept over her, taking in the gloves, the high collar, the fabric that covered every inch of skin. If he was curious about what she hid, his expression didn't show it. "You're wondering why I chose you," he said. It wasn't a question, but Seren nodded anyway. "My wolf." Theron moved toward his desk, his movements carrying that same careful stiffness she'd noticed before. "When I walked past you," he reacted. For the first time in months, he stirred. He paused, studying her with an intensity that made her want to step back. "I don't know what you're hiding beneath those coverings. Frankly, I don't care. My pack is dying. I need an Omega bond to anchor them, and my wolf chose you. That's all that matters." Seren's mouth went dry. "Your Majesty, before you commit to this, you should know." "I should know what?" He raised one hand, cutting her off. "That you're hiding something? That whatever lies beneath your gloves is something you believe will disgust me?" She said nothing. What could she say? "The wedding will take place at dawn," Theron continued. "You'll become my queen, my bonded Omega. In exchange, you'll receive protection, title, wealth, everything befitting your station. And in exchange? You give me heirs. You anchor my pack bond. You fulfill your duty as my mate." He paused, and something flickered across his expression, gone too quickly to name. "Other than that, I want nothing from you." Seren stared at him. "Nothing? Our lives will be separate, different chambers, different schedules. We'll appear together for official functions, nothing more. The marriage will be contractual." She waited for the rest. The demand that she remove her gloves. The insistence that he see what he was binding himself to. It didn't come. "Your Majesty," she tried again. "Even if you don't wish to see, others will notice. They'll talk. They'll tell you things about me that you should hear from me first." "Should I?" Theron's head tilted slightly. "Would you prefer to tell me?" Seren hesitated. "I would prefer you not be blindsided." For a long moment he simply looked at her. Then he shook his head. "I don't have time for surprises or secrets or whatever shame you're carrying. I have a pack that's dying. Children who will never know their wolves. Elders who won't survive the winter. His voice dropped. And a body that's failing faster than I can hide. The admission hung between them. Raw. Honest. If you can anchor the bond, I don't care what you're hiding. Keep your gloves. Keep your secrets. I won't ask you to reveal anything. Seren's eyes burned. Why would you offer that? Because I'm not looking for a real marriage. I'm looking for survival. Yours. Mine. My pack's. He turned back toward the window. Is that acceptable to you? She should refuse. She should tell him the truth about the silver that glowed beneath her skin, about the corruption her father said leaked from her pores, about the mother who had died screaming that Seren's touch had poisoned her blood. But then she remembered Thornfeld, her father's hatred, the disposal he had planned. Cold over cruelty, she thought. I'll choose cold over cruelty every time. Yes, Seren whispered. It's acceptable. The chambers they gave her were larger than the entire house she'd grown up in. A canopied bed draped in silver silk. Windows overlooking the moonlit forest. A bathing room with a tub carved from white stone. And servants, 3 of them, who arrived within minutes of her arrival. We'll help you prepare for the night, my lady, the eldest said, a woman with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair. Is there anything you require? Seren clutched her gloved hands against her chest. I prefer to bathe alone and dress myself. The servants exchanged glances but didn't argue. As you wish, my lady. We'll wait outside. When they left, Seren finally allowed herself to breathe. She moved to the window, staring out at the forest below. Even from here, she could sense something wrong with the land. The trees were too still, the shadows too thick, a corruption that pulsed beneath the surface like infection spreading through veins. It's real, she thought. The dying pack, the curse. It's all real. And Theron believed she could help. Believed her Omega bond could anchor the pack and slow the corruption spread. He was wrong, of course. If he knew what she truly was, he'd realize she would only make things worse. Her touch didn't heal, it poisoned. Her father had shown her proof of that the night her mother died. A knock at the door made her spin around. Enter, she called, expecting the servants. But it wasn't a servant who stepped inside. It was Odessa. Her younger sister stood in the doorway, dressed in a traveling gown dusty from the road. Her golden hair was disheveled, her blue eyes blazed with fury. You, Odessa spat. How dare you? Seren's heart dropped. Odessa, what are you doing here? What am I doing here? Odessa stepped forward, her fists clenched at her sides. I was supposed to be chosen. Father promised. He said the king would select me, that I would finally escape Thornfeld and become someone. And instead, that monster chose you. I didn't ask to be chosen. Of course you didn't. Odessa's laugh was bitter. You never ask for anything, do you? You just hide in your room with your gloves and your shame, and somehow everything still falls into your lap. This isn't a gift, Odessa. This is a dying king who needs an Omega anchor. He doesn't want me. He just wants my bond. Then give it to him. Odessa's voice rose. Bond with him tonight. Anchor his pack. And when it doesn't work, when the corruption spreads anyway, you'll finally have to answer for what you are. Seren went very still. What I am? Don't. Odessa stepped closer, her expression hardening. Don't pretend you don't know. I was there the night Mother died, Seren. I heard her screaming. I saw the silver light pouring from your hands while she begged you to stop. That's not what happened. She touched you. She tried to comfort you during one of your episodes, and your corruption burned through her body from the inside out. Tears blurred Serene's vision. Father told you that. Father lies. Father protected us from you. Odessa's voice shook with conviction. He bound your power so you couldn't kill anyone else. And now you're here, about to bond with a dying king, and you don't think your corruption will make things worse? I'll be careful. I won't let him touch my skin. You think that will be enough? Odessa grabbed Seren's gloved wrist and Seren flinched back violently. Even through fabric, your poison seeps. That's what father said. That's why mother died even though she only held your hand for a moment. Stop. Seren pulled free, pressing herself against the window. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Odessa straightened, composing herself with visible effort. You're going to destroy this king just like you destroyed our mother. And when you do, when the whole kingdom sees what you really are, they'll burn you alive for it. She moved toward the door, then paused. I almost feel sorry for him, you know. He chose you because he thought you could save his pack. A cold smile crossed her face. He has no idea he just invited death into his bed. Then she was gone. Serene stood frozen, her gloved hands trembling, her chest heaving with breaths that wouldn't come fast enough. She wanted to believe Odessa was wrong, that their father's stories were lies, that her power wasn't corruption but something else entirely. But she remembered that night too. The silver light erupting from her skin, her mother's screams, the way her mother's veins had turned black before she collapsed. What if Odessa was right? What if bonding with Theron would only speed his death? Outside her window, the forest waited in unnatural stillness. Somewhere in this castle, an Alpha King was counting on her to save his pack. And beneath her gloves, the silver glow pulsed like a second heartbeat, hungry and waiting. By dawn, she would be his queen. By dawn, she would know if she was his salvation or his destruction. Dawn came too quickly. Seren stood before a mirror she couldn't bring herself to look into, while servants moved around her in careful choreography. They dressed her in a gown of deep blue velvet, the color of twilight before full dark. The sleeves were long, the collar high, and beneath the fabric, fresh gloves of matching silk covered her hands to the elbow. No one had questioned her requirements. The servants simply adapted, working around her coverings with practiced efficiency. You look beautiful, my lady, the eldest servant said. Marin, Seren had learned her name was. The king will be pleased. Seren doubted that very much, but she nodded anyway. The corridors felt different this morning. Colder, more watchful. Guards stood at every intersection, their expressions grim. And through the tall windows, Seren could see the courtyard below filling with people, pack members, hundreds of them, gathered to witness their alphas mating, to see the Omega who would supposedly save them. As she descended the grand staircase, she got her first real look at the corruption's toll. A woman near the front clutched a child to her chest. The child's eyes were dull, unfocused. No wolf stirred behind that gaze. Beside them, an elderly man leaned heavily on a younger one's arm, his skin carrying that same ashen quality she'd noticed in Theron. They're all dying, she realized. Not just the king, the entire pack is fading. And they were all looking at her with hope. The weight of that hope nearly crushed her. The ceremony was held in the Great Hall, the same space where she'd been chosen just hours before. But now it was transformed. Silver flowers cascaded from the rafters, candles burned in spiraling patterns along the walls. And at the altar, standing beside a priestess in white robes, waited the Alpha King. Theron looked worse than yesterday. The shadows beneath his eyes had deepened. His movements, as he turned to watch her approach, were slower, more deliberate, as if each motion cost him something. But his gaze was clear, focused entirely on her. Serene walked alone down the aisle, feeling every stare, hearing every whisper. Why is she covered? What is she hiding? She's supposed to save us, but she won't even show her face? She kept her chin up, kept walking, kept breathing. When she reached the altar, Theron extended his hand. A simple gesture, an invitation. Seren hesitated. Her gloves would prevent skin contact, but even so, it's all right. Theron said quietly, too low for anyone else to hear. I won't demand more than you can give. Something cracked inside her chest. She placed her gloved hand in his. His grip was ice cold even through the fabric, but it was also steady, certain, anchoring her when she felt like she might fly apart. The priestess began speaking, reciting ancient words about bonds and blood and wolves intertwined. Seren barely heard them. She was too aware of Theron's hand holding hers, of his scent, winter pine and wounded darkness, of the way his thumb traced a single small circle against her palm before going still. He's trying to comfort me, she realized with shock. Even now, even dying, he's trying to make this easier. The verbal claiming, the priestess announced. Since the physical marking will be completed in private, the Alpha will now speak his claim. Theron turned to face Seren fully. His pale eyes held hers, and she saw something flicker in their depths. Not love, but something else. Respect, perhaps, or determination. I claim you as mine, he said, his voice carrying through the silent hall. My wife, my queen, my omega, my anchor. From this dawn until my last. The words rolled through her like thunder. Her wolf, dormant for so long she'd almost forgotten it existed, stirred restlessly inside her chest. Your claim, the priestess prompted gently. Seren swallowed. Her voice emerged steadier than she expected. I claim you as mine, my husband, my king, my alpha, my bond, from this dawn until my last. Something shifted in the air between them, not the snap of a true mate bond, not yet, but the beginning of something. A thread spun between them, fragile and new. The marking, someone called from the crowd. Show us the marking. Others took up the cry. Wolves howled. The noise built until the walls seemed to shake with it. Seren's heart seized. The marking required skin, teeth against throat. There was no way to hide. The marking, Theron announced, his voice cutting through the chaos, will be completed privately, as is my right as Alpha King. Silence crashed down. Your Majesty, a nobleman protested, stepping forward. With respect, the pack deserves an Omega anchor who can save them. Theron's tone could have frozen fire. Not a spectacle for your entertainment. My queen's modesty will be respected. Anyone who challenges that challenges me. No one else spoke. Seren stared at him, something warm and unfamiliar blooming behind her ribs. He'd protected her. Publicly, without hesitation. The priestess cleared her throat. Then by the ancient laws and the blessing of the moon goddess, I pronounce you mated. Alpha and Omega, king and queen, bound until death or mutual release. Theron lifted Seren's gloved hand to his lips. The kiss was gentle, formal, pressing against her knuckles through the silk. His lips were cold, but his eyes, when they met hers, held the faintest hint of warmth. Thank you, Seren whispered, too quiet for anyone else to hear. Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, maybe, as if gratitude was the last thing he'd expected. Then the crowd erupted in cheers and the moment was lost. But Seren held on to it anyway, that single spark of warmth in eyes cold as winter, that thumb tracing circles against her palm. Maybe, she thought, maybe this won't destroy us both. She was wrong, of course, but she didn't know that yet. Night fell over Valdris like a held breath. Seren sat on the edge of the massive bed in the queen's chambers, her gloved hands clasped in her lap, her heart beating so hard she could feel it in her throat. The servants had prepared her for the wedding night. Fresh coverings, softer than before. A sleeping gown that somehow maintained her modesty while still being appropriate for what was expected. What was expected? She knew the mechanics, of course. Every Omega did. But knowing and experiencing were vastly different things. And the thought of what might happen if Theron touched her bare skin, if the silver light erupted while they were... A knock at the door made her jump. Enter, she managed. Theron stepped inside, and Seren's breath caught. He'd changed from his formal attire. Gone was the elaborate jacket, the ceremonial chains, the crown. He wore simple clothes now, a loose white shirt unlaced at the throat, dark trousers, and bare feet against the stone floor. He looked younger like this, less like a king and more like a man. A man who was visibly exhausted, whose skin held that ashen translucence, whose movements carried the careful quality of someone managing constant pain. He closed the door behind him. The click seemed to echo endlessly. "You're afraid," he said, not a question. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Of me? Or of something else?" "Both," she wanted to say, but what came out was, "Of hurting you." His head tilted slightly. "You think you could hurt me?" "I know I could." The words escaped before she could stop them. "My touch. It isn't safe. If you felt what lies beneath my coverings, you'd understand why I hide." Theron was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved toward a chair near the fire and sat, leaving her alone on the bed. The distance felt deliberate, respectful. "I told you before," he said. "I don't need to see what you're hiding. I don't need to touch bare skin. The bond can form through proximity, through scent, through intention. But the marking can wait." He leaned back in the chair, studying her across the fire-lit space. "I'm not interested in causing you pain, Seren. I've caused enough of that in my lifetime." Her name on his lips did something strange to her heartbeat, made it stutter and race. "Then what are you interested in?" "Survival." His voice was matter-of-fact. "Mine, my packs, and yours apparently, given the fear you carried when I first saw you." Seren looked down at her gloved hands. "You notice that?" "I notice everything." A pause. "Your father. He was planning something, wasn't he? Something that would happen if you weren't chosen." Her throat tightened. "Yes." "Do you want to tell me?" "No." He accepted that with a small nod. "Then we won't discuss it. Not tonight. Tonight, we simply exist. Together. Nothing more." She looked up, surprised. "Nothing more?" "The bond will form gradually. Proximity helps. Sleeping near each other helps. But I won't touch you without consent. I won't demand anything you're not ready to give." Something almost gentle crossed his expression. "Is that acceptable?" Tears burned behind her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "Why are you being kind to me?" Her voice cracked. "You're dying. Your pack is dying. You need this bond to work, and I'm making everything harder." "You're making nothing harder." Theron's voice cut through her spiral, firm but not harsh. "You have boundaries. I'm respecting them. That's not difficulty. That's basic decency." Seren stared at him, this cold king who radiated winter but spoke words warmer than any she'd heard in years. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "You don't need to understand me." He rose from the chair and moved toward the bed, stopping several feet away. "You just need to rest. We have time to figure out the rest." He held out his hand, not demanding, offering. Seren looked at that hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she placed her gloved fingers against his palm. The cold of him seeped through the fabric, but so did something else. That strange thread she'd felt during the ceremony. It pulsed between them now, faint but present. "The bond," she breathed. "Yes." His fingers curled gently around hers. "It's beginning." He led her to the bed and they lay down together, fully clothed, a careful distance between their bodies. The fire crackled in the hearth. Outside, wolves howled in the darkness. "My pack sings for their new queen," Theron murmured. "They don't know you yet, but they sense the bond forming. It gives them hope." Hope. That word again. That weight. "What if I can't save them?" Seren whispered to the darkness. "What if I make everything worse?" Silence stretched so long she thought he might have fallen asleep. Then his voice came, rough and honest. "Then we fail together. But at least we'll have tried." His hand found hers again. Cold fingers wrapping around gloved ones. Not skin to skin, but close. So close. Seren fell asleep like that, holding hands with a dying king in the darkness, the bond between them pulsing like a second heartbeat. She didn't notice the faint silver glow that flickered beneath her gloves, didn't see the way it pulsed in rhythm with that bond, and she didn't feel Theron's sharp intake of breath when he noticed it. But he said nothing. He simply held her hand tighter and watched the silver light pulse like a dying star until dawn crept through the windows. Days passed, then weeks. And everything Seren thought she understood about this arrangement began to crumble. Theron came to her chambers every night. Not for consummation, though that had eventually happened, careful and controlled, both of them mostly clothed, his hands never straying beneath her coverings. But after, he stayed. He slept beside her in the massive bed, his cold body seeking her warmth, his arms sometimes draping across her waist in unconscious possession. She should have minded. She didn't. During the days, they were separate. He had a kingdom to run, councils to attend, decisions to make. She had her own duties now, lessons in protocol and politics from advisors who watched her coverings with curiosity but never questioned them. But the evenings belonged to them. He'd appear at her door as the sun set, sometimes still dressed in formal attire, sometimes already changed into the simple clothes he wore in private. They'd eat together by the fire, talking about nothing and everything. He told her about his pack, about children he'd watched grow from birth who now faced lives without their wolves, about elders who'd served his family for generations, now wasting away in the healing halls, about his own wolf, once a silver beast of legendary power, now silent more often than not. She told him about Thornfeld, about growing up in a house where her father's hatred filled every room, about learning to hide her skin before she could read, because touching anyone brought pain she couldn't explain. She didn't tell him about her mother, about the silver light, about what Odessa believed she'd done, but she told him almost everything else. "You're not what I expected," Theron said one evening, watching her over the rim of his wineglass. "When I saw you at the selection, hidden beneath all those coverings, I assumed you'd be timid, broken. And now? Now I know you're steel wrapped in silk." Something warm flickered in his pale eyes. "You've survived things that would have destroyed others. That takes strength, Seren. Real strength." She looked away, her cheeks heating beneath her high collar. "I'm not strong, I'm just stubborn." Same thing, in my experience. The bond between them had grown over these weeks. She could feel it now like a cord connecting their hearts, thrumming with his presence when he was near, aching with his absence when he wasn't. Her wolf, dormant for so long, had begun to stir more frequently, reaching for him, yearning. "I'm falling in love with him," she realized one night, watching him sleep beside her. His face was slack, younger in rest, the lines of pain temporarily smoothed away. "I'm falling in love with a dying king who swore he'd never love me back." It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt inevitable. Like the tide. Like the moon. But as the bond grew, so did her awareness of the corruption eating his pack. She saw it everywhere now, in the way servants moved too slowly, their wolves sluggish within them. In the empty nursery wing, because no pups had been born healthy in over a year. In the healing halls, where the scent of sickness grew stronger each time she passed. One night, unable to sleep, she slipped from Theron's arms and walked through the castle alone. Her feet carried her to the healing halls without conscious decision. The moon was full, its light spilling through tall windows, illuminating rows of beds filled with the dying. An old woman lay nearest the door, her breathing shallow and her skin gray. As Seren watched, she stirred, her eyes opening to fix on Seren with surprising clarity. "The new queen," she whispered. "Come to watch us die?" "No," Seren moved closer before she could stop herself. I came because I couldn't sleep. Guilt keeps you awake? The old woman's lips curved in a bitter smile. Don't worry, child. You're not killing us. The curse is. What curse? You don't know? The woman laughed, the sound turning into a cough. Our king doesn't share his burdens easily. But you should know. You're bound to him now. His fate is your fate. Seren knelt beside the bed, her heart pounding. Please, tell me. The old woman studied her for a long moment. Then she lifted one frail hand and pointed to a mark on her own wrist. A symbol Seren didn't recognize, branded into the skin. Generations ago, a witch cursed the Valdris line. The Alpha's power would fade, his pack would wither, and any Omega who bonded with him would share his death. The words hit Seren like a physical blow. Share his death? The bond connects you now. His corruption will become yours. You'll fade together. The woman's eyes closed. It happened to his mother, to his grandmother before her. Every Omega who bonds with a Valdris king dies alongside him. Seren's gloved hands trembled against the stone floor. Why? She managed. Why would he bond with me knowing that? Because he's desperate. The woman's voice faded to a whisper. And because he hoped, perhaps, that this time would be different. Seren stood on shaking legs. The room spun around her. She needed air, needed space, needed to think. She stumbled toward the door, but a small sound stopped her. A child's whimper from a bed in the corner. A girl, maybe 5 or 6 winters old, lay curled on her side. Her skin was gray like the others, but her eyes were open, filled with tears. It hurts, the child whispered. The emptiness where my wolf should be. It hurts so much. Something cracked inside Seren. Before she could think, she was kneeling beside the child's bed, her gloved hand reaching out. Don't, she told herself. Don't touch her. You'll only make it worse. But the child looked at her with such pain, such desperate hope, that Seren couldn't stop herself. She placed her gloved hand against the child's forehead, and her power erupted. Silver light blazed through her gloves, through her skin, pouring from her palm into the child's body. It wasn't the painful burning her father had described. It wasn't corruption or poison or death. It was warmth, life, light. The child gasped, her gray skin flushed pink, her dull eyes brightened, then widened. My wolf, she breathed. I can feel my wolf. Seren yanked her hand back, staring at her gloved palm in horror and wonder. The silver light faded, sinking back beneath her skin. What did you do? The old woman was sitting up now, staring at them both. What was that light? Seren didn't answer. She ran. She ran through the corridors, her mind racing faster than her feet. Her power wasn't corruption. It wasn't poison. It was healing. But if that was true, then everything her father had told her was a lie. Her mother's death wasn't her fault. The shame she'd carried her entire life was built on deception. Why? Why would her father make her believe she was a monster? She burst into her chambers and stopped dead. Theron stood by the window, fully awake, his pale eyes fixed on her. I felt it, he said quietly. Through the bond. That surge of power. His gaze dropped to her gloves. What are you, Seren? She opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, a horn sounded in the distance. Once, twice, 3 times. Theron's expression hardened. The warning call. Something's happened. The door burst open. A guard stood there, breathless, eyes wide with terror. Your Majesty, the corruption. It's spreading faster. The eastern wing of the healing halls, everyone there. He couldn't finish. He didn't need to. Seren could feel it through the bond now. The wave of death rolling toward them like a tide of darkness. The pack connection screaming with loss. And beneath it all, her silver power pulsing, desperate to be released. desperate to save them, if only she knew how. The eastern wing was a graveyard. Seren stood in the doorway, her gloved hands pressed against her mouth, fighting the urge to scream. 30 beds, 30 bodies. Pack members who had been alive hours ago, now still and gray and cold. Gone. Theron moved past her, his face carved from stone. He knelt beside the nearest bed, pressing his fingers to a young man's throat, searching for a pulse that wasn't there. They went all at once, a healer said, her voice trembling. We felt the bond connection snap, like strings being cut, one after another until... She couldn't finish. Theron stood slowly, too slowly. Seren saw the way his hand gripped the bed frame for balance, saw the fresh gray creeping across his skin. The pack deaths were draining him. Every severed bond tore something from his soul. How many remain? He asked. In the healing halls? Perhaps 200? In the pack overall? The healer's voice broke. Maybe 1,000. Once, Seren knew the Valdris pack had numbered 10,000. The curse had been feeding on them for generations, and tonight, it had grown hungrier. Your Majesty. A guard rushed in, breathless. The corruption, it's visible now. In the forest. It's moving toward the castle. Theron's jaw tightened. Show me. They climbed to the highest tower, Seren following despite no one inviting her. From there, she could see what the guard meant. The forest surrounding Valdris was dying. Trees that had stood for centuries were blackening, their leaves falling like ash, and moving through that decay, visible even in moonlight, was a darkness, not shadow. Something worse, something alive and hungry and wrong. It's never moved this fast before, Theron said. His voice was steady, but Seren felt his terror through the bond. Something accelerated it. What? He didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the approaching darkness. The bond, he finally said. Our bond. It woke something. Made the curse angry. Seren's blood ran cold. You knew this could happen? I hoped it wouldn't. He turned to face her, and she saw the truth in his eyes. The guilt, the desperation. Every Omega who bonds with a Valdris king shares his death. That's the curse's price. But I thought maybe this time, if the bond was strong enough. You thought I could break it? I thought we could fight it together. His hand rose, almost touching her face before falling away. I was wrong. The curse is too strong. And now it's coming for everyone. Seren looked back at the encroaching darkness. Through the bond, she felt Theron's wolves, the ones still alive, howling in terror. Felt children crying for parents who couldn't protect them. Felt elders accepting deaths they'd hoped to escape. And beneath it all, her silver power surged. No, she whispered. Theron frowned. No? I won't accept this. Seren stepped toward the tower's edge, staring down the darkness like a challenge. There has to be a way. My power. I healed a child in the healing halls. I brought her wolf back. That has to mean something. Your power? Theron's voice sharpened. What power? Seren, what are you? She turned to face him. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled off her gloves. Silver light bloomed beneath her skin, pulsing through her veins like liquid moonlight. It was beautiful, terrifying, and unmistakably magical. Theron stared at her hands. His expression shifted through shock, confusion, and finally, recognition. Moonfire, he breathed. You carry moonfire. I don't know what that means. It's an ancient power, the opposite of the corruption. His eyes lifted to hers, blazing with sudden hope. It was moonfire that originally blessed the Valdris line, before the witch twisted it into a curse. If you carry that light... A violent tremor shook the tower. They both staggered. Below, wolves howled in panic. The darkness had reached the castle walls, and Theron collapsed. Theron! Saren caught him before he hit the stone, cradling his head in her lap. His skin was ice cold. The gray had spread across half his face. "The curse," he gasped. "It's feeding on me. Using the bond to—" His eyes rolled back. His body convulsed. And through their connection, Saren felt what he couldn't say. The curse was pulling him under, using their bond as a conduit to drain them both. Her power surged in response, desperate to help, but she didn't know how to direct it, didn't know how to save him without destroying herself. "Someone help!" she screamed. "The king is dying." Guards rushed up the stairs. Healers followed. Chaos erupted around her. But Saren barely noticed. She was too focused on the silver light pouring from her hands into Theron's chest. Too focused on the darkness fighting back, trying to consume them both. Too focused on the impossible choice forming in her mind. If she stopped, he would die tonight. If she continued, they might both die anyway. The curse was ancient, powerful, fed by generations of death. And she was just one woman with a power she didn't understand. But she was also his mate, his anchor, his queen. So she held on. Even when the darkness screamed. Even when her own veins began turning gray. Even when the world went black, and the last thing she felt was Theron's frozen hand clutching hers. Saren woke to agony. Every nerve burned. Every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. She was lying in her chambers, the fire burning high, and Marin's worried face hovering above her. "She's awake," the servant called. "Your Majesty, she's awake." Theron appeared at the bedside instantly. He looked terrible, gray-skinned, hollow-eyed but alive. Alive. "You foolish, beautiful woman," he breathed, gripping her gloved hand. Someone had dressed her again while she slept. "You nearly killed yourself." "Did it work?" Saren's voice scraped like rust. "The curse?" Slowed, not stopped. His jaw tightened. "You bought us time, maybe a few days. But the darkness is still coming." She closed her eyes. A few days. She'd nearly died, and all she'd bought was a few days. "My power isn't strong enough," she whispered. "Your power is exactly strong enough." Theron's grip tightened. Moonfire can break the curse. The old texts are clear on that. But you don't know how to use it properly. You're fighting instinct instead of control. "Then teach me." "I can't. I don't carry moonfire. I don't know how it works." His voice dropped. "But I know who might." Saren's eyes opened. "Who?" "The witch who created the curse. Her bloodline still exists. If anyone knows how to unravel what she wove." "Where do I find them?" Theron hesitated. Something dark crossed his expression. "Theron. Where?" "Thornfeld," he said quietly. "The witch who cursed my line 300 years ago was named Vera Ashford. And according to our records, her descendants still live in your father's territory." The words didn't make sense at first. Saren turned them over in her mind, examining them from every angle. Then understanding crashed through her like a wave of ice water. "Ashford," she breathed. "My mother's maiden name was Ashford." Theron nodded slowly. "I know. You knew." She tried to sit up, but her body screamed in protest. "You knew my family was connected to the curse and you didn't tell me?" "I suspected. I wasn't certain." His hand cupped her face, his cold palm gentle against her fevered cheek. "And I didn't want to burden you with more fear than you already carried." "More fear?" A bitter laugh escaped her. "Theron, I've spent my entire life believing I was a monster, believing my touch killed my mother, and now you're telling me my mother's bloodline created the curse that's destroying your pack?" "No." His voice hardened. "I'm telling you your mother's bloodline might hold the key to ending it." The distinction mattered. Saren felt it shift something inside her. "My mother," she said slowly. "She died when I was 7. My father said I killed her, said my power corrupted her blood." "And you believed him?" I saw it happen. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I saw the silver light. I saw her veins turn black. I heard her screaming. Theron was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Did you see her die? Or did you see her change?" The question stopped her breath. She tried to remember. Tried to push past the terror and guilt and see that night clearly, the silver light erupting from her hands, her mother's screams, the black veins spreading across her skin, and then, nothing. She'd passed out. When she woke, her father was standing over her, telling her she'd killed her mother, telling her she was a monster who needed to be bound. I never saw her body, Seren realized. He never let me see her body. Because perhaps there wasn't a body to see. Theron's eyes held hers. Perhaps your mother didn't die that night. Perhaps your power did something else entirely. The possibility was too enormous to grasp. Too terrifying. Too hopeful. I need to go to Thornfeld, Seren said. I need to find out the truth. You can barely stand. Then I'll crawl. She gripped his hand with desperate strength. Theron, if my power can save your pack, I have to understand it. And the answers are in Thornfeld. With my father. With whatever he's been hiding. Theron studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. We go together. At dawn. You can't travel. You're too weak. And you're too important to lose. His voice brooked no argument. Where you go, I go. That's what mates do. Mates. The word wrapped around her heart. Even mates who swore they'd never love each other? She asked quietly. Something shifted in his expression, something raw and vulnerable. I think, he said slowly, we both knew that vow was impossible the moment I took your hand. He didn't say the words, neither did she, but they both felt them, pulsing through the bond like a second heartbeat. Thornfeld looked smaller than Seren remembered. The manor house that had loomed so large in her childhood memories was actually modest compared to Valdris Castle. Its stone walls were gray with age, its gardens were overgrown, its windows watched their approach like empty eyes. Are you ready? Theron asked, his hand finding hers. No. Seren stepped down from the carriage anyway. But I'm going in regardless. They'd brought guards, a dozen of Theron's best, despite his weakened state. He'd insisted on riding beside Seren the entire way, though she could see how much the journey cost him. His skin was gray. His breathing was labored. The curse was still feeding. But his hand was steady when it held hers. And his presence anchored her fear. The manor's front door opened before they reached it. Lord Brennan-Croft stood in the doorway, Seren's father. He looked older than she remembered, his hair silver now instead of gray, his face lined with something that might have been age or might have been bitterness. His eyes fixed on Seren, and his expression twisted with an emotion she couldn't name. So, he said, the prodigal monster returns. Father. Seren stopped at the bottom of the steps. We need to talk. Do we? His gaze flicked to Theron. I see you've brought your dying husband. Tell me, daughter, have you killed him yet? The way you killed your mother? I didn't kill Mother. The words came out stronger than she expected. And I think you know that. Something flickered across Brennan's face. Fear? Guilt? You're delusional, he said. I saw what you did. You saw nothing. Seren climbed the steps, forcing her father to step back. You found me unconscious and told me a story. A story designed to make me believe I was a monster, to make me hide my power, to make me never question what really happened that night. Seren. Odessa appeared behind their father, her face pale. What are you doing here? Finding the truth. Seren turned to her sister. You said you were there that night. You said you saw me kill Mother. But did you actually see her die? Odessa's mouth opened. Closed. Her eyes darted to their father. Well? Seren pressed. Did you see her body? Father showed me? Did you see her actually die? Silence. And in that silence, Seren knew. She's alive, isn't she? The words emerged as barely a whisper. Mother is alive. Brennan's face went white. Where is she? Theron stepped forward, his alpha presence rolling through the entryway despite his weakened state. Where have you hidden her? You don't understand, Brennan said, backing away. That woman. She's not safe. She's not human. Not anymore. The change that night. It made her something else. What change? Seren demanded. What really happened? The moonfire. Brennan's voice cracked. It didn't kill her. It transformed her. Unlocked something in her blood. The Ashford curse. It's in our line too, you see. We carry the witch's legacy, but it's been dormant for generations. When your power activated, it woke your mother's as well. Seren's mind reeled. She became a witch? She became a threat, Brennan shouted. She wanted to use her power, wanted to find the Valdris pack and break the curse her ancestor created. She was going to expose our family's secret, reveal that we were descendants of the witch who cursed the royal line. We would have been executed. So you locked her away, Theron's voice was ice, and told your children she was dead. I protected my family. You protected yourself. Seren stepped closer, her hands trembling with the effort of not reaching for him. You made me believe I was a monster. You bound my power. You tried to sell me into slavery. And all because you were afraid of what I might become. What you would become. Brennan pointed at her with a shaking finger. Look at you now. Married to the cursed king, your power awakened. Moonfire blazing in your veins. You're exactly what I feared. A weapon that could destroy us all. Or save us all. A new voice echoed through the hall. Everyone turned. A woman stood at the top of the stairs. She was older than Seren remembered, her dark hair streaked with silver, her eyes carrying depths of pain and resilience. But her face was unmistakable. Mother, Seren breathed. Isolde Ashford descended the stairs slowly, her gaze never leaving her daughter. She had never taken her husband's name, Seren realized. She had always been an Ashford, always carried that bloodline proudly even when it meant imprisonment. Hello, my darling, she said, her voice warm despite the tears on her cheeks. I've been waiting for you for a very long time. She stopped in front of Seren, drinking in her face with a mother's hunger. You've grown so beautiful. And your power. I can feel it singing in you. Her eyes flickered to Theron. You've bonded with the cursed king. Yes. Then you know what needs to be done. I know I can break the curse. Seren's voice shook. But I don't know how. Isolde smiled, reaching up to cup her daughter's face. Her touch was warm. Safe. Everything Seren had been denied for 17 years. I know how, Isolde said. I've spent 17 years imprisoned in this house, studying our bloodline, preparing for this moment. The curse can be broken, Seren, but only by someone who carries both the moonfire and the bond. She carries both, Theron said. She's bonded to me. Yes. Isolde's smile faded. But breaking the curse requires sacrifice. The moonfire must burn away the darkness completely, not just in the pack, but in the one who unleashed it originally. Seren's blood ran cold. What do you mean? The curse was cast by our ancestor using her own life force. It can only be broken the same way. Isolde's eyes glistened. Someone with moonfire must sacrifice themselves to end it. No. Theron stepped forward. Absolutely not. There's no other way. Then we find another way. His alpha voice thundered through the hall. I didn't bond with her to watch her die. I won't accept. You may not have to. Brennan's voice cut through, strange and defeated. There's something you don't know. Something I never told anyone. Everyone turned to face him. The sacrifice, he said slowly. It doesn't have to be Seren. It can be any descendant who carries dormant moonfire. His eyes met Isolde's. My grandmother was an Ashford. The bloodline runs through me as well. It can be me. The silence that followed was absolute. Father, Odessa whispered. What are you saying? I'm saying I've spent my entire life running from what I am, hiding from the power in my blood, punishing my wife and daughter for awakening what I was too afraid to face. His shoulders slumped. I've been a coward, a monster, and I've caused more pain than I can ever make right. He looked at Seren, and for the first time she saw something human in his eyes, something broken. Let me fix this, he said quietly. Let me be the sacrifice. They rode through the night. Brennan sat between two guards, his hands bound, though he'd offered no resistance. Isolde rode beside Seren, mother and daughter reunited after 17 years, their hands clasped across the distance between their horses. I never stopped thinking about you, Isolde said. Every day in that prison, I dreamed of this moment. I thought I killed you. Seren's voice broke. For 17 years, I believed I was a monster. You were never a monster, my darling. Your father was afraid. Afraid of himself. Afraid of me. Afraid of what our bloodline means. Fear makes people cruel. Isolde squeezed her hand. But you survived. You're here now. And together, we're going to end this. They reached Valdres as dawn painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. The darkness had advanced during their absence. It surrounded the castle now, a wall of corruption pressing against failing wards. Pack members stood on the battlements, watching their king's return with desperate hope. We don't have much time, Theron said, his voice strained. The curse has been growing stronger every hour. If we don't act soon, we act now. Brennan stepped forward, his bound hands raised. Tell me what I need to do. Isolde studied her husband with an expression Seren couldn't read. Hatred? Forgiveness? Perhaps both. You'll need to enter the heart of the darkness, she said. The curse has a core, a point where the witch's original life force still burns. That's where the sacrifice must happen. Show me. They moved through the castle quickly, gathering what they needed. Ancient texts that Isolde had memorized during her imprisonment, herbs that focused moonfire, symbols that would channel the sacrifice, and Seren's power, pulsing beneath her skin, ready to be unleashed. They reached the courtyard, and Seren finally saw the curse up close. The darkness was a living thing. It pulsed and writhed, reaching toward the castle with hungry tendrils. At its center, barely visible, a point of black light burned like a reversed star. There, Isolde pointed. That's where Vera Ashford's life force still exists. That's what powers the curse. Brennan stared at the darkness, his face pale but resolved. When I reach the core, he said, what happens? Your moonfire will ignite. It's been dormant your entire life. But in that space, surrounded by the curse's energy, it will awaken. And when it does, Isolde hesitated. It will burn you alive, but it will take the curse with it. Brennan nodded slowly. And my daughters? They'll be safe? Yes. Isolde's voice softened. The moonfire will cleanse your bloodline. Seren, Odessa. They'll no longer carry the dormant curse. They'll be free. He turned to face his children. Odessa was weeping, her earlier cruelty stripped away by the magnitude of what was happening. She looked young suddenly, frightened. I'm sorry, Brennan said to her, for making you hate your sister, for lying to you, for turning you into someone you were never meant to be. Father, Odessa's voice broke. Let her be better than me. He looked at Seren. Both of you. Be better than I ever was. Seren didn't know what to feel. This man had tormented her, imprisoned her mother, tried to sell her into slavery. He'd spent her entire life convincing her she was a monster, and now he was sacrificing himself to save her. I don't forgive you, she said quietly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I know. Brennan's smile was sad. I don't deserve forgiveness, but perhaps I can still earn redemption. He turned and walked toward the darkness. Wait! Theron stepped forward. The curse was created by hatred. It can only be fully destroyed by its opposite. What are you saying? I'm saying you might enter that core with all the moonfire in the world, but if you carry the same hatred and fear that created the curse, you'll just become fuel for it. Theron looked at Seren. You need something else. Something stronger. Seren understood. She moved toward the darkness, stopping beside her father. I'll go with you, she said. No. Theron lunged forward, but Isolde caught his arm. She has to, Isolde said quietly. The moonfire needs a living anchor. Someone who can channel love and forgiveness into the sacrifice. Without that, the curse will simply reform. She'll die. She'll live. Isolde's voice held absolute certainty. The moonfire protects its carriers. Brennan will burn because his power was never awakened, but Seren's has been active for weeks. It will shield her. Theron's eyes met Seren's across the distance. I love you, he said. The words came out raw, desperate, and finally spoken aloud. I love you, and I cannot lose you. Seren felt tears track down her cheeks. I love you too, she whispered, and that's why I have to do this. For you, for the pack, for everyone. She took her father's hand. Together they walked into the darkness. The curse screamed around them, tearing at their bodies with claws of shadow and ice. Serene felt it trying to corrupt her, trying to turn her moonfire into fuel for its hunger. But she held on to love. Love for Theron, who had chosen her when no one else would, who had respected her boundaries and slowly won her heart, who was standing in that courtyard, watching her walk into death, trusting her to return. Love for her mother, who had survived 17 years of imprisonment rather than abandon hope, who had spent those years preparing to save her daughter. Even love for her father, twisted and complicated though it was. Love for the man he might have been, if fear hadn't poisoned him. They reached the core. The black light burned before them, pulsing with ancient hatred. Seren could feel Vera Ashford's rage echoing across 3 centuries. Rage at the Alpha King who had rejected her. Rage that had curdled into a curse meant to destroy his entire bloodline. Now, Brennan said. His eyes were wet. Do it now. Seren released her power. Silver light exploded from her hands, flooding the darkness with moonfire. It poured into her father, awakening the dormant power he'd spent his life denying. It poured into the curse's core, drowning that ancient hatred in pure, radiant light. Brennan screamed. His body blazed silver, then white, then nothing at all. And the darkness shattered. Seren fell. But before she hit the ground, arms caught her. Cold arms, familiar arms. I've got you. Theron murmured against her hair. I've got you. She opened her eyes. They were back in the courtyard. The darkness was gone. The forest was green again, and all around them, pack members were crying, laughing, embracing. The wolves! Someone shouted. I can feel my wolf again. The children! Look at the children! Seren struggled to sit up. Across the courtyard, a small girl ran toward her family on steady legs. The same girl Seren had healed in the healing halls. Her wolf blazed behind her eyes, fully restored. You did it! Theron breathed. You actually did it. We did it. Seren looked at the spot where her father had stood. Nothing remained. Not even ash. She didn't know how to feel about that either. But then Theron's cold hand cupped her face, turning her toward him, and she forgot about grief and guilt and everything else. I love you, he said again. I need you to know that. Not because of the bond, not because you saved my pack. Because of you. Your strength. Your kindness. The way you never stopped hoping even when you had every reason to despair. Seren smiled through her tears. I love you too, she said, even though you're freezing. Theron laughed. the sound bright with joy and relief. "I'm actually warming up," he said. "For the first time in years, I actually feel warm." She pressed her hand against his chest. He was right. The ice that had lived in his bones was finally thawing. The curse's grip on his body was fading. "We're free," she whispered. "Both of us." "Both of us," he agreed. And then he kissed her. Not a kiss through gloves or fabric or careful distance. A real kiss. His lips against hers, his hands in her hair, his body pressed close. Serene kissed him back with everything she had. Around them, wolves howled in celebration. Pack members cheered. The sun rose fully over Valdris, painting everything in gold. And for the first time in her life, Seren wasn't hiding. She was home. 6 months later, the Moonfire Academy opened its doors. Seren stood on the steps, watching young Omegas file inside, their eyes bright with excitement. Beside her, Isolde smiled. "Your father would be proud," her mother said, in his own complicated way. "Maybe." Seren's hand rested on her swelling stomach. "I still don't know how to feel about him." "You don't have to know. Grief isn't simple. Neither is forgiveness." Isolde squeezed her hand. "Just feel what you feel. That's enough." Odessa approached from the crowd, her expression tentative. Things between them were still awkward, still healing, but they were trying. "The king is looking for you," Odessa said. "Something about the nursery." Seren laughed. "He's been obsessing over the nursery for weeks. He wants everything perfect." Odessa's smile was genuine this time. "For you and the baby." Seren found Theron in the nursery, arguing with a carpenter about the placement of a cradle. He looked healthy now, color in his cheeks, warmth in his skin. His wolf ran beside him again, silver and powerful. "Your Majesty," she said. "Are you terrorizing the staff?" He turned, his face lighting up when he saw her. "I'm ensuring our child has the best possible cradle. There's a difference." She crossed to him, sliding her arms around his waist. His hands immediately went to her stomach, cradling the swell of their child. "I love you," she murmured against his chest. "I love you." Ran through gardens that had been dead for years. Pack members laughed and worked and lived without fear. The curse was broken. The pack was saved. And Seren, the hidden Omega who had arrived at Valdris expecting nothing but survival, had found something she never dared dream of. A home, a family, a love that had burned brighter than any darkness. By dawn, everything had changed, and it was only the beginning. Thank you for listening to this story. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. I always read them, and they mean more than you know.